Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the RI's News Channel. Now let's take you back to Nigeria's suspension of the fuel subsidy removal, with which we started the program today. And to also join in that discussion is Professor Pat Utomi, Nigerian professor of political economy and a management expert. Prof, it's good to have you on This Day Live today. For a moment, I thought you were somewhere in the world. I have been trying your line since yesterday.
I'm actually in Washington, D.C.
Oh, really? Okay, I suspected as much. But thank you for joining us very quickly on the issue of fuel subsidy. The federal government of Nigeria has now decided to postpone the evil day, that's my opinion, beyond July, 18 months further down the line. What do you make of that? Do you think that's just a political decision? And how does that serve the interests of the average Nigerian, considering the fact that the same government is now going to make a proposal for a variation of the Appropriation Act to borrow about 3 trillion naira more, about 17.5% of the total budget that has been presented?
Ruben, in politics, it is said that politics is the art of the possible. But when we make certain possible choices, we show that we are not statesmen and that what drives us is not the fundamental interest of the people. I thought that they would throw down the gauntlet so that the Nigerian people can have a consensus conversation on what is important to move the Nigerian economy forward. But obviously they're scared of taking the right decision because the motives are unclear. This business of petroleum subsidy is a very nuanced one. It is one that is dependent on sincerity of purpose of political actors to start with. We have created a more or less extract and spend political economy, which is not making us make progress. In this extract and spend political culture, politicians just make budgets, expect something to come from crude oil and spend it. It's not sustainable. It has not been for 30-something years. We have all talked about it. And so we don't have a strategy on what to do with oil. And when we begin to subsidize it, as it is said, quote unquote, because fundamental to this so-called subsidy, I've argued for many years, is really a game between business people and political actors that does not take sustainable economic growth into account. In 2012, there were these demonstrations, which I was part of. And the reason was simple. I'm not a quote-unquote subsidy person because I know the challenges there. But I know that the strategy that politicians apply is to get people in the petrol business, I like to call it that way, to be as crude as possible, to play this game with subsidies so they can extract money for their own use, usually to fund the election. And when this is put as subsidy, then, the people in Washington get excited, the Washington consensus guys, yes, remove subsidy. But the truth of what it costs to get petrol to the Nigerian people is really not known. Why we have the state in which refineries don't work is really not known. Why we have played this game for years, it's clear. But we've not had that conversation because politicians just keep looking, oh, how can we get Labour Congress and the civil society people off our backs so that we can carry on the way we are carrying on? No, we need a conversation in Nigeria about the direction of our country's economy, and it's not going the right way. And this whole subsidy thing is a ruse around tax on petrol or non-tax, which is played out as a subsidy game. But to come very clear, the best time to deal with this kind of issue is when you have a government, if it's run by statesmen, that is technically a lame duck. It is not going for another election. So its life does not depend on the next vote, if those votes count at all in Nigeria anyway. This is time to then be honest and say, what is the problem? Let us build a lead consensus in a conversation that will help people understand what the issues are. But clearly they don't have the courage to do it, and that's why we are where we are. The evil day has just been postponed again, and we're waiting for somebody else to deal with it. But it's just as well. You see, everybody's waiting for this government to go away. The international investment community, everybody. The Buhari government became a lame dog 2 years and 6 months to the end of its administration. That's a tragedy for Nigeria, because nobody wants to make any decision around the world. They're waiting for the government to go before they know how to take a position on anything in Nigeria. They shouldn't run a government that brings us to that kind of point. If they had the courage to put issues before people, we could then come to some consensus of what really needs to be done. Now, when you go and then borrow all this money and then use it as it's going to be used, as I suspect, you just make a more terrible day come to the next generation. And the next generation must say no. People must pressure the National Assembly to stop all the borrowing because they're damaging the next generation. And let us have a conversation about funding development. We have not been creative about how we fund development. Private capital can do a significant part of this. There are things government must do, and government needs to focus on them. Those things government must do, government is not even doing it. Look at the disaster that is the education sector. If there is really anything government must do, it's a focus on the social sectors. All this nonsense about infrastructure. Look, fortunately, a Nigerian was part of a team with Christensen, Professor Christensen at Harvard in the prosperity paradox. We know that private capital can significantly fund infrastructure, but it will not do if you don't have a disciplined environment that allows markets to emerge. The kind of regulatory capture we have in Nigeria, the poor governance we have in Nigeria, will not allow the environment that leads private capital to begin to develop this infrastructure and government focus on what it must focus on, the social sectors, education, healthcare. That's where almost all of government's resources should go into. But education is a mess in Nigeria. Health sector is a total disaster. So what is it that government is doing in Nigeria? Let people know, because it does not seem to me that those who run Nigeria have a clue what governments are supposed to do. Because if they had a clue, the obtuse nature of our budgetary process will not be what it is. The emphasis that we should make it way out of whack.
Well, Prof, I mean, on the question of whether or not they know what to do, NNPC has just taken a 5 billion investment facility from African Bank, and that has been touted as a major step forward to fund, investments in the upstream sector. And also at the same time, we're told in the papers today that the federal government is going to invest as much as $98 million, 17.2 billion naira in the refineries, Port Harcourt refinery, particularly as advance payment, as a way of addressing some of these issues. And the federal government has approached the National Assembly to cover up the 3 trillion deficit. So will it be right to say the government is not doing the right thing?
Ruben, if you wanted to fund a commercial transaction of that nature, and you just manage to get the environment to behave properly, you will find the private capital in the world to get us to refine petrol very well, sell it, export it for profit, and whatever. We chose not to go down that track because we know that our environment is not investment grade. Why should we be spending public money to do refineries? Why? Look, there are countries that have sold crown jewel, if you will, assets for one pound. Rolls Royce was sold for £1, so that those who can run it can come and take it over and run it. Why are we playing these games with refineries? Let us ask a great refiner in the world to come and take these refineries for £1 with a certain deadline of what outputs we want, the portion for export, and that. It's just like the power mess that we have in Nigeria, provide power to Nigerians. Hey, Look, GE, take the whole system for 1 naira, but we want 24/7 power in 3 years. We want this. That's what Dubai does. But our politicians see power as a way of extracting private economic benefit. State capture is what prevents us from making the right choices in our country. And the people are punished every day for it. Young people must know that it's their future that these fellows are rubbishing. And they must get up and say, this is not acceptable. A country cannot be run like this. You know, that's what the problem of Nigeria is. Civil society is not energized enough. The person who preceded me in the conversation with you made that point very clear. We cannot. That's why there's a coup in Burkina Faso. When people do not govern in the interest of the people, they will, no matter how docile they think people are, ultimately provoke a revolution. And this is what Nigeria is setting itself up for. A political class that cannot prioritize properly, govern sacrificially in the interest of advancing the common good. It's not a political class. It doesn't even understand what being a political class really is. It is an army of occupation. And that's how increasingly the Nigerian people perceive government, as an army of occupation. And this must change.
Okay, Prof, one more question, and I'll be done. And this has to do with the role of money in Nigerian politics. You have been a presidential candidate, you've been a gubernatorial candidate. In August 2021, in the process of amending the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, as it is called, the National Assembly took a look at clause 90, clause 91, dealing with the amount of money that an individual can contribute to political causes. Now, they raised campaign finance by 500%, which in effect will mean that for you to be president of Nigeria, you need about 5 billion. For you to be governor, you need about 1 billion. For you to be a Senate or House of Reps, you need between 700 million and 100 million or whatever. And to even be a chairman of a local council, you need 30 million. That was 500% increase. Now the National Assembly is saying that, well, INEC will be given the powers, that's the commission, to determine how much you spend. And I recall one politician was telling me that even 5 billion to become president of Nigeria is too small. So what do you think, as someone who has been through that route before?
Well, you know, let me kind of preface this with a little story. A couple of years ago, I was invited to dinner with two British MPs, women MPs who were visiting Nigeria. One of them is someone of Nigerian heritage, Chi Onwura, who represents Newcastle upon Tyne in the UK Parliament. And I remember asking her how much it cost her. And she had it clear in her head. I don't remember exactly, 8,000 something pounds was what it cost her to become an MP. And that was mainly money spent buying stamps and getting her friends to sit down and be licking the stamps and putting on handbills or whatever. Look, until we can stop Nigerian politics from being about money, Nigeria will not make progress. I want to assure you that those who bankroll these things will remain the people who are pulling the strings, the puppets will dance to, and their goal is not the common good of the people. This has been solved elsewhere in the world. I know in the United States, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of action around campaign finance reform through the years, but a very simple, straightforward one, which I like to cite all the time, is that of South Korea. South Korea, years ago, burdened by money politics, decided that if it was going to really move forward, it had to find some way of eliminating the power of, money bags in politics. And the South Korean Electoral Commission put out a set of rules that really base campaigns on debates. You want to run for anything, you will have a series of debates, from the streets to the TV stations and all of that. So you can articulate what you want for the people, and people can question you on the appropriateness of those choices and how they can hold you accountable. And that cleaned up South Korea and got it on its way going. Look, if you take South Korea and compare with Nigeria, classic example, you will begin to get to the roots of what's wrong with us, why we are not making progress. I was talking with Dr. Sylvester Ogo, who lives here now in the Washington, D.C. area. I was talking with him hours ago. And Dr. Ogo, literally, I mean, to be fair to the poor man, cannot still recall his roommate in 1959 in university here in the US was a South Korean. At that time, we were sort of like at par, if not ahead of South Korea. A military coup took place, removed the politicians, and the cost of South Korea reversed. In Nigeria, a military coup took place years later, made things worse. The culture of governing in Nigeria went down. Why the military route take South Korea north and take Nigeria south? Big question. I'm looking to work on a book that can explain some of those things. But coming directly to the campaign finance issue, the citizens have to realize that unless they can take over financing elections, there's no hope for them. That is clear in my head. Unless they can put up $10, 10 naira, the way the NSAS young men and women raise their financing, Nigeria has nowhere to go. It's all dressed up with absolutely nowhere to go. So the games at the National Assembly increase this. Is what makes the governors determine everything in Nigerian politics. Why? Because they can take this treasury of the Nigerian state, either in the name of whatever it's called, security vote or whatever, just take whatever they like to use to finance parties, to use to finance elections. So everybody goes to the governor kneeling down, begging so that the election can be financed. The political parties are kneeling down on their knees, prostrate from the governors, because all the stolen money from the Commonwealth of Nigeria is being used to finance elections. Most of these fellows should be in jail in any normal country, but Nigeria is not normal. And the question is, how do we make Nigeria normal? This is like an asylum which the inmates have taken over and are subjecting the psychiatrists to tests. That's what Nigeria has unfortunately become, and we must change it for the sake of our children. We have nothing to lose anymore. We've run the course. Why should we allow our children to inherit the kind of country that we are bequeathing to it? We must not allow it to continue. If it costs our life, let us go out there and stop them, because they are ruining the future of our children. Well, elections cannot be financed like this.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Professor Pat Utomi, for joining us on This Alive, the Sunday Talk Show today.